thousand stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, it's love so undeniable. I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable. I can hardly think as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still as you call me. Deeper still into love. Love, you're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are.
Well, good morning, everyone. As Ryan said, I'm Soph, and I'm part of the team here, and I'm so excited to be speaking with you today. This morning, I thought we would talk a little bit about identity. You know, when I turned 16, I had this mentality shift, which most teenagers tend to have. Some have them when they turn 13, some when they turn 16. And I like to call it the stage, it's the you don't define me stage. You know, it's the attitude stage. Parents in the room with teenagers, you know what I'm talking about. Some people don't leave that stage, you know. My brother. You know, when I turned 16, so basically, most people in this room are parents. You take care of your kids, our carers take care of us, and they choose what we wear, what we end up eating, drinking, who we end up hanging out with. And a lot of who I am today is based off of my mum. Thanks, Mum, you're watching this morning. Right now, I'm thankful for that, but back then, not so much. You see, when I turned 16, I noticed something. And it was on this particular evening. And I was getting ready for my 16-year-old fun plans, you know, that you have when you're 16 years old. Can't remember what I was doing, but it was going to be fun. And I like to go whoop whoop because 16-year-old fun, whoop whoop. And I was getting myself ready. And I'd picked out the perfect outfit. Hollister was massive when I was 16, so I had my Hollister top. I was wearing my Heelys, don't know if you remember those. I preferred to glide instead of walk, basically. But then when you realise that actually when you're walking in Heelys, you just clunk, don't you? So I did glide most of the time. And I put my makeup on, I was ready. And I walked downstairs and I was greeted by my mum. And my mum stopped me. She said, "Stop. Sophie, you are not leaving the house looking like that, are you?" Rude, first of all. Thanks, Mum. All right, say it a little bit kinder. But she wasn't commenting on my clothes, funnily enough. She wasn't commenting on my makeup, which I was 16, I grew up in Essex. You can imagine what that looked like. But she was commenting, which doesn't really matter towards the story until a little bit towards the end, but she was commenting on my hair, which was an absolute mess as I look back now. Little 16-year-old Soph was absolutely fuming at her mum in this moment. And I remember thinking, I can't believe Karen, I called her Karen in my head, not out loud, I can't believe she's talking to me like this. And I turned to her and I said, "Mum," not Karen, "Mum, I'm 16 years old now. You don't define me." I know, she was a bit big for her boots. Not like that now. But what happened is that memory kind of sparked a thought in me. If I'd decided at that point who defined me in that moment, if my mum didn't define me in that moment, then who did? Who defined me then? At that point, in this specific case, it was a Pinterest board that I'd made. And it was called Goals, heart emoji. And it was full of all these 16-year-old goals, you know. It's like, you know, my husband at the time, Zac Efron. Love him in HSM. It was, it was, you know, Disneyland, Florida, because what 16-year-old doesn't want to go to Disneyland, Florida? It was full of all that stuff. And more particularly, just in my defence, it had this hairstyle that I really liked. It was like beachy waves. And I thought in order to get that hairstyle, this is just in my defence, it's got nothing to do with what I'm talking about today, I thought you needed to not wash your hair or brush it to get that thing, which is, you didn't need to do that, and I learnt that now. But that's what my mum was commenting on, so I'll give her that. But for me to make that decision, that something had defined my identity, I must have believed that something did define me or could define me, you know, and that, who that was, however, changed and chopped and changed from, you know, my parents to Pinterest, from my friends' comments to comments on the internet. It changes all the time. And so this morning, I want us to think about who defines us. What defines who you are? And I really want us to think about who actually has the final say. We are going to be looking at an encounter in the Bible between a woman in need of healing and Jesus. And we're going to be reading through Mark chapter 5, verses 21 to 34. If you want to open it, you can join and follow through, but it's going to be on the screen if you want to read along too. It says this: When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She'd suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. Yet, instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if only I could just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and he asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," his disciple answered, "and yet you can ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet. Trembling with fear, she told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go and be freed from your suffering." Let's pray together before we begin. Father, I thank you that you know each and every one of us in this room by name. You have a love so deep for us. I pray that you would speak through me this morning. May it be your words, not mine. And may we learn a little bit more of who you are and who we are in you. So when we read this passage, we meet this woman, and she has been suffering for 12 years with this ongoing condition. And to put it into context where this woman is at, it's believed that she has an internal bleeding within her. And how she is feeling in this moment. She's probably in pain. She's probably tired. She's been suffering for 12 years and all that has come with that. And there is a lot that has come with this. You know, a woman with this kind of suffering back in those days would have been subject to a life on her own. A life of shame, actually. Wrongly or rightly, it's something like this would have either ended a marriage or prevented a marriage, because she wouldn't have been able to continue a family line. Now, what we do know about this woman is what we don't know about this woman. Now, stay with me. What we do know is that we don't know this woman's name. I was reading the passage and I read it in different translations, and it's also, this encounter is spoken about in quite a few parts of the Bible. And I went back and I read them, and this woman's name is never mentioned. She's not known by a name. She's known as the woman with the issue of blood. That is all she is known for. But who defined her as that? That was my question when I was reading this passage. Who decided that that was who she was? It was a society of people who didn't really know who she was, just what she had. A society of people who didn't look at her for who she truly was, but what she could bring. And in her condition, she couldn't bring an awful lot. In those times, anyone who was sick or wounded, they wouldn't actually have been allowed anywhere near the temple to worship God. And if anyone had been near them or touched them, they would have been subject to the same thing. You know, to the people around her, to her community, she was written off. She was actually unclean. And when I say unclean, I mean she was unwanted, she was uncared for, and she was unloved by those around her. People did not want to be around her. You know, I was thinking about this passage, I was thinking about this woman and thinking about how we can fit into her story today. And what I think she fell victim of was identity theft. We know identity theft today is when someone misuses your personal information for their gain. You know, it tends to be faceless hackers who take your identity, and in this case, and many cases today, it's faceless opinions that made her lose her sense of self. Faceless opinions that made her lose her sense of self. You know, so many things today we wouldn't even know are stealing our identity and defining who we are. You know, we're either oblivious to them, we don't even know they do it, or we just let them. I was looking at the penalty for identity theft, and it's 2 to 7 years in prison if you are found guilty of that. And that's if they're caught. It's a crime that is taken seriously, but the kind of theft that I'm talking about is the subtle opinions that eat away at you, that make you lose who you are. It's the thoughts that you have about yourself and what you've done. They don't get 2 to 7 years in prison. You do. This woman did. She had 12 years in prison, basically. You know, when you are in prison, someone else decides when you are going to eat. Somebody else decides when you are going to have some free time. It's not decided by you. And it's the same thing. Our whole selves can be decided and defined by others, by us, by social media, until we have lost all sense of who we actually are. You know, it's that serious. Did you know your emotions can steal your identity, your true self? What has happened to you can steal your identity. Physical suffering can steal your identity. Your failures, they can steal from who you truly are. What you think of yourself can steal from your identity. What you think they think about you can steal your identity. The enemy can steal your identity. Mental health can steal from your identity. And I know me saying all these things, most of these things are pretty inevitable in life. We live in a rubbish world filled with chaos and hurt. And so I'm right with you when I read this list off my iPad. I can see a lot of myself in this list. You know, I've believed many things to be true of myself. I still do, that aren't really who I am. I've let voices define my identity. You know, more than Pinterest and more than Instagram, I've actually let friends, people who are close to me, completely change who I am and what I do. Completely. To the point of what I wear, where I go, who I am. You know, I've given that power to somebody else. I've given that power to things that I'm still trying to work on getting back myself today. It's that serious. It's the power we give it in our lives. And I think we need to recognize who that power is really meant to be with, who it really needs to come from. You know, it says when this woman came to Jesus, she came up from behind him. And it said she touched the bottom of his robe. That to me suggests that she came crawling in. 12 years is a long, long time for someone to believe something that is true of them that isn't their true identity. And it breaks me to think that she genuinely believed she was an inconvenience, that she wasn't meant to be there. She still was there. Why was she still there? You know, I think she realized, it says in the passage that she went to different places, different doctors. She left feeling worse. It didn't help her. And I think she realized that over time, going to those different places and finding no freedom, that some things just need to be brought to the manufacturer to be fixed. Some things just need to be brought to the Creator to be healed. You know, only the Creator of something knows exactly how to take care of it and put it back together correctly. And it's simply because they know the ins and outs of what they have created. They know it all. So she took it to the Creator. And in that moment, she demonstrated what faith can look like, what courage consisted of. She thought, if only I could get close enough to the power of someone who can perform these miracles. If only I could just get closer to Jesus. He doesn't have to look at me. He doesn't have to know me. He doesn't even have to touch me. If only I can get close to him. If only I can touch the dirtiest part of him, not even him. He doesn't have to give me a hug, know my name. If only I can get close to him. Desperation to be close to Jesus. It resulted in her healing. If only we could get close to Jesus' power this morning. What if this morning you took back the power that you had been giving to other things and other people and you chased after him? What if you ran after Jesus and you spent a little time with him? What if your mentality was, if only I could get to Jesus, and not if only I could get the girl, if only I could get that job, if only I could get that promotion? What if it was, if only I could get to Jesus? How would that look for you in your life? You know, I've been stuck on this verse for a few weeks now, and it's Jeremiah 29:13-14, and it says this. When you come looking for me, you'll find me. Yes, when you get serious about finding me and you want it more than anything else, I'll make sure you won't be disappointed. I'll turn things around for you. This woman was so serious about finding Jesus more than anything else, more than what everyone around her would think of her. You know, that is what faith looks like. And that faith is how she was healed. She was free. But the thing is, this woman, she knew Jesus' power. Yes, she experienced his power. But she didn't know his character. She hadn't experienced who Jesus was to her. And so I'm going to read again the end of this passage just to remind us, and just listen to what Jesus does. At once Jesus realized the power had gone out of him. He turned around in the crowd and he asked, "Who touched my clothes?" You see the people crowding against you, his disciples answered. And yet you can ask, "Who touched me?" Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet. And trembling with fear, she told him the whole truth. Jesus said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go and be freed from your suffering." Jesus stopped. Guys, this is huge. Jesus was actually on his way to heal somebody else's dying daughter. I mean, if that wasn't urgent, I don't know what is. And his disciples knew it. His disciples were like, "Jesus, we don't have time for this." Jairus, the dad of his dying daughter, has probably been like, "Oh, great, Jesus is coming, let's go." He turns around, Jesus has stopped, and he's like, "Jesus, my daughter is dying. What are you doing? We haven't got time for this." But Jesus stops. The world in that moment stopped for this woman. Jesus' attention was on her. You know, Jesus' attention is fully on you. You have his undivided attention. Like the God of the universe wants to sit down and hear what you have to say to him. Hear the whole story. If you have believed this morning that other things are far more important to Jesus than you, then I'm sorry, but you have been mistaken. Because Jesus is a friend who wants to come and sit and listen to you and to me. Only you come to him and chase after him. I want to note what Jesus didn't do. Jesus didn't rush her. He didn't shame her. He didn't make her explain herself as to why she went to other people before she came to him. He didn't make her explain herself in public as to why she was even there. You know, he listens to this woman and she tells him the whole truth. Guys, I don't think it was the Sparks Notes version. It was the unedited, raw version. The whole truth. The raw truth, the truth that she was probably weeping. This is 12 years, if not more, of hurt and pain that she is talking to her Saviour about. And this woman, you know, she didn't actually have to tell him everything so that he would know. He's God. He knows all and he sees all. No, this woman had to tell Jesus the whole story to realise and recognise she needed more than just physical healing that day. She needed restoration. She needed reclaiming. She needed to recognize the power that she'd been giving to other people and letting her life define them, letting them define her life. And so what he did do is he restored her. He restored her name and he rewrote her future. She wasn't bound by the identity that she had believed herself to be. She wasn't who she thought she was. She wasn't who they thought she was. You know, you are not who you think you are sometimes. You are not who they say you are sometimes. He claimed her identity, and that was daughter. Oh, it was daughter. Like, Jesus doesn't say this to anyone in the Bible. He doesn't call anyone else daughter, and he calls her daughter. And note that he didn't call her daughter after she had explained herself, all of that stuff. He calls her daughter. That's the first thing he says to her. You you are my daughter. He says, you are my beloved. I don't care what you did last night. All I care about is you. I don't care what result you get in that exam that you're sitting tomorrow morning. All I care is that in this moment, you know in your heart that I love you and that you are mine and you are a success to me. This woman came for physical healing, but Jesus wasn't going to let her walk away without being made whole. Jesus is willing to be identified with us, our mess, to make us whole. In fact, he became our mess, and he took it on, and he died. And when he hung on that cross and said it is finished, he meant it. He actually meant that it was done and it was finished. You know, when he conquered death, that was the only thing that was keeping us between him and God. And so when he said it was finished, that means nothing can stand in the way of the truth. And he is the truth. All those things you believe of yourself, you know, all those definitions you have placed on yourself, they actually have no power on you. They aren't who you are. You know, Jesus wants you to know this morning that you are not your worst fears. You are not your past hurts. You are not your failures, your emotions. You are not that divorce. You are not that grade. You are not what you did last night, that relationship breakdown. You are not your depression, and you are not your anxiety. You're just not. You know who you are? You are chosen. You are more loved than you will ever know. You are important and you are a masterpiece. You are a daughter. You are a son. Child of God, and you are made whole in him. You don't have to crawl up behind him in shame to beg for his attention. Because of what Jesus has already done for you, you can boldly approach him, knowing that you are already made new. You are already made whole. But this is the definition of our identity. This is who defines us. We are children of God. You are so loved by a heavenly Father. Parents in the room, you know how deeply you love your children. Well, that is how deeply he loves you. But times, I don't even know, 1 trillion, whatever the biggest one is. We don't have to do anything to earn that title. It just means he thinks the world of you, exactly who you are in this moment. He wants to protect and cherish you in every way. You know, it's nobody else's job to identify you other than the one who created you. This morning, I believe God wants his job back. He wants to restore you of things that have broken you, that have made you believe that you are who you really aren't. So let's give God the final say. It's not easy. Let's do it. This morning, let's walk in the truth and claim that truth. Who defines us? Jesus. He says you're a child of God, then you are. That's just who you are. Amen. Shall we stand together? And I'm just going to pray. I'm going to invite the worship team to come up.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make a wretch his treasure. How great the pain of searing loss, the Father turns his face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon the cross, ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me to life. I know that it is finished. And I will not boast in anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, His death and resurrection. Why should I gain from His reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: His wounds have paid my ransom. Why should I gain from His reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know with all my heart: His wounds have paid my ransom. Your wounds have made, your wounds have made, your wounds have made a way. Your